You ever find yourself staring at your phone waiting for a reply that never comes? You replay every moment, every laugh, every glance, and you ask yourself, what did I do wrong? It's like your heart is standing at the edge of a cliff, waiting for a reason not to jump. And the silence, it screams louder than any goodbye ever could. Let me tell you something raw, something that might just split you wide opening sometimes. The one who says he loves you is the one who disappears when you need him the most. Not because you're too much, because you're not enough, but because he doesn't know how to love you the way you deserve to be loved. And you sit there trying to decode the distance, wondering why someone who once held your heart now treats it like it's a burden. This isn't about lame, it's about truth. And the truth is, love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's painfully quiet, but here's what you need to hear. Deep in your bones, you are not crazy for wanting clarity. You are not weak for needing presence. So let's break this down, because what you're feeling is real, and you deserve answers that make you stronger, not smaller. Let's get real about what this actually means. Here's what's really happening beneath the surface. I want you to hold on to these truths like oxygen. This is what no one tells you, but you need to hear. These next points might hurt, but they'll also set you free. When someone you care about goes silent, it can feel like the lewdest rejection in the world. It's not just the absence of words, it's the absence of presence, the absence of effort, the absence of being seen. And in that silence, your mind goes to war with itself. You start overanalyzing every conversation, every smile, every moment of laughter. You wonder if maybe you said too much, Abe, or not enough. You ask yourself, what did I miss? Or worse, what's wrong with me? But the truth is, silence is a message people don't like to talk about because it forces us to confront something uncomfortable. Not everyone who says, I love you, is capable of loving you in the way that counts. Real love shows up. Real love communicates. Real love doesn't vanish when things get complicated. When someone is truly invested in you, when they genuinely care about your heart, they don't go silent. Even if they're overwhelmed. Even if they're scared. Even if they don't have all the answers. Because people who care try. People who care, even if they're broken or flawed, show up in some form. Maybe messy, maybe awkward, but they show up. Silence, especially when it becomes a pattern, is not an accident. It's a choice. And that choice says everything. You see, when someone consistently houses silence over connection, they are communicating with you loud and clear. They're saying, I don't know how to hold space for you. They're saying, your needs make me uncomfortable. And sometimes they're even saying, I'm not willing to make the effort it takes to sustain this relationship. It's not always out of malice. Sometimes it's immaturity. Sometimes it's emotional unavailability. Sometimes it's fear. But whatever the root cause is, it's not your job to decode their silence. It's not your responsibility to fix it. And I know, especially if you're someone who loves deeply, it's tempting to rationalize. You might say, he's going through something. Or maybe he just needs space. Or he's not good at expressing himself. And those things might be true. But space shouldn't feel like abandonment. Struggles shouldn't come at the cost of your peace. And emotional expression isn't optional in relationships. It's foundational. Think about how many times you've made excuses for someone's silence, how many nights you've cried yourself to sleep, hoping they'd just send one text, one call, one sign that they still care. That's not love. That's emotional starvation. That's you surviving on crumbs and convincing yourself it's a feast. When someone you truly loves you, they don't leave you guessing. They don't make you feel invisible. They don't turn love into a maze you have to solve. Love should feel like warmth, not confusion. It should feel like consistency, not chaos. And yes, people are imperfect. Yes, people struggle. But if silence is their default, if every time things get vulnerable or real, they disappear, you need to hear this used. That's not your person, not your forever. That's someone who may have liked the idea of you, but couldn't handle the reality of you. And that's not your fault. You deserve someone who makes you feel safe in their presence, not anxious in their absence. You deserve someone who chooses communication over avoidance. Someone who even in their messiness says, I'm here. I'm trying. I care. Silence might feel easier for them, but it's soul-crushing for you. And your heart isn't a place for someone to hide from their emotions. When someone loves you, you don't have to beg for their attention. You don't have to remind them that you exist. You don't have to break your own heart hoping they'll finally see the pieces. They will know. And they will act accordingly. Silence isn't just a lack of words, it's a lack of effort, of presence, of partnership. It's a reflection of where someone is emotionally. And here's the thing, people always show you who they are. Believe them the first time. If someone shows you they're inconsistent, distracted, emotionally unavailable, that's not a challenge to win them over. That's a sign. A sign that maybe they're not ready. Maybe they're not capable. And maybe, just maybe, Your love isn't meant to be poured into someone who treats your heart like a temporary home. The person who's meant for you will never leave you in silence. They will never let you feel like you're fighting alone. They will not weaponize distance as a way to control or confuse you. They will lean in even when it's hard. They will say, "I'm not perfect, but I'm here." And that is love. So, when you're faced with silence, don't fill it with fantasy. Don't fill it with hope that maybe one day they'll come around. Fill it with truth. The truth that your needs are valid. The truth that your heart is worthy of effort, of words of presence. And the truth that silence is not a mystery to be solved. It's an answer. You're not asking for too much. You're asking the wrong person, and in the silence they left behind, you will learn to hear your own voice louder, stronger, wiser. You will realize that sometimes silence isn't rejection. It's redirection, and it's leading you back to yourself, because when someone truly loves you, they don't ignore you. They don't make you question your worth. They don't disappear when it matters most. They speak, they show up, and they stay. And you deserve nothing less. Avoidance, it's one of the most understood behaviors in relationships, especially when you're on the receiving end of it. It can feel like you're being pushed out of someone's life without warning, like you're standing at a closed door, knocking, and all you hear is silence on the other side. And what's worse, the person behind that door once swore they loved you, once held you like you were everything. Now, they vanish when things get real. You don't know why, and you're left trying to make sense of it in the quiet. Here's the raw truthing: avoidance is a coping mechanism. It's not about you, it's about them. But the pain it causes, that lands directly on your chest. When someone avoids you after claiming to love you, it can feel like the most brutal form of betrayal. You think love should mean showing up. You think love means working through the messy, uncomfortable, vulnerable parts of life together. And you're right, that's what real love looks like. But not everyone has the tools to do that. Not everyone is ready to face themselves, much less the weight of loving another person deeply. Avoidance is often mask people wear when they're afraid of confrontation, not just with others, but with themselves. It's the emotional version of putting your fingers in your ears and pretending the problem isn't real. It's their way of saying, "I can't deal with this right now." Even if this is you, your feelings, your relationship. And that hurts, because you are not a problem to be avoided. You are a person to be seen, heard, understood. The person avoiding you might not be malicious. They might even believe they love you. But love without emotional maturity isn't enough. Love without communication isn't sustainable. You need more than someone's feelings. You need their presence. You need their willingness to lean in when things are hard, not just when it's convenient or easy. Avoidance is easy. That's why so many people choose it. But ease doesn't equal love. Effort does. Think about it. When conflict arises, when vulnerability is required, when emotional intimacy is necessary, some people shut down. They disappear into silence. They avoid your calls. They don't respond to your messages, or they give one-word replies that say everything and nothing all at once. And it leaves you confused, anxious, questioning your worth. That's what avoidance does to the person left behind. It breeds self-doubt. It makes you feel like maybe you were too much. Maybe you came on too strong. Maybe you scared them away with your depth, your honesty, your heart. But let me tell you something you need to remember. You didn't scare them away with your love. They ran from their own fear. Their fear of being vulnerable, their fear of not being good enough, their fear of getting hurt, their fear of being seen. Avoidance is rooted in fear. And when someone hasn't healed from their past, when they haven't developed the emotional tools to communicate or stay present through discomfort, they default to running. Not physically, always, but emotionally. They check out. They distance themselves. They say things like, "I need space." But what they mean is, "I don't know how to handle closeness without losing myself." You might think, if I just give them more time, they'll come back. And maybe they do. But the question isn't if they come back. It's what they do when they return. Do they address the issue? Do they acknowledge your pain? Or do they pretend like nothing happened? Because avoidance without accountability just leads to repetition. And that cycle will wear you down. You deserve more than a love that disappears when things get real. You deserve someone who can sit in the discomfort with you. Someone who can say, "I don't have the answers, but I'm here. Let's figure it out together." Someone who doesn't run at the first sign of emotional depth. Avoidance is an attempt to protect oneself from perceived pain. But what it actually does is cause pain to others. It leaves the other person feeling abandoned, discarded, unworthy of resolution. And that's a heavy burden to carry, especially when all you wanted was connection. And let's not confuse avoidance with healthy boundaries. There's a difference between someone taking a moment to gather thoughts and someone consistently ghosting you when the relationship requires growth. Boundaries are communicated. Avoidance is evasion. Boundaries respect both parties. Avoidance disregards one entirely. You cannot build something lasting with someone who refuses to be emotionally present. No matter how strong the attraction, how deep the connection once felt, if someone constantly checks out when vulnerability is required, the foundation will crack. Over time, you'll find yourself shrinking. You'll start withholding your feelings to avoid scaring them off again. You'll second-guess every text, every conversation, every need. And that's not love. That's survival. And love is not meant to be survived. It's meant to be shared, grown, nurtured. The person who avoids you isn't necessarily a bad person, but they may be bad for you. They may not have the capacity to meet you where you are. And it's okay to grieve that. It's okay to feel the loss of a connection you hoped would last. But don't let their avoidance become your blueprint for love. Don't let it teach you that silence equals safety, or that emotional withdrawal is normal. You need someone who can stay in the room with you, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Someone who sees conflict as a bridge, not a barrier. Someone who says, "I'm not going anywhere," and actually means it. Avoidance may protect the person doing it from temporary discomfort, but it creates permanent wounds in the person left waiting. And you were not made to be left waiting. You were made to be loved in full presence. So the next time someone disappears when things get real, don't chase them. Don't beg for breadcrumbs of attention. Instead, look inward and remind yourself, I deserve a love that doesn't run. I deserve a love that stays. Because you do. Always. Love. Real love isn't something that simply fades away when the going gets tough. It doesn't disappear or shrink when life demands more from us. If someone truly loves you, if they truly care about you, if their heart is in it, they show up, even when it's uncomfortable, even when they don't have all the answers. And that's the difference between a love that's root and thin, solid, something lasting, and a love that's built on fleeting emotions or superficial connections. You see, real love doesn't vanish. It doesn't disappear when the challenges come. It doesn't bail when there's distance or when the world outside feels chaotic. Love that's authentic, deep, and genuine digs in its heels and finds a way to bridge the gaps, whether those gaps are emotional, physical, or spiritual. If someone truly loves you, they don't let silence become a pattern. They don't let hurt become a reason for avoidance. They find a way to lean in, not lean out. And that's the problem with so many of the relationships we encounter. We mistake the absence of conflict for the presence of love. We think that because everything is calm, everything is fine. But calmness doesn't necessarily equate to deep connection. You can have peace on the surface and still be emotionally distant. You can getting along without truly knowing each other or feeling deeply connected to one another. Love isn't just about smooth sailing. Love is about being able to weather the storms together, to be there for each other when things get rough, to show up and stand firm even when the tide feels like it's pulling you apart. When someone truly loves you, they aren't looking for an escape. They aren't seeking ways to emotionally detach when things get tough. Instead, they dive, commute, decaper. They make an effort to understand what you're going through, to understand your feelings, your fears, your needs. They don't assume. They don't leave you to figure it all out on your own. They stand with you in the discomfort. They lean in during the difficult moments, not just when it's easy or fun. True love doesn't hide from conflict. It faces it together. Think about the times in your life when things were difficult, whether emotionally, physically, or mentally. And think about who stood by your side. Who was there for you when you needed them the most? Who didn't shy away from the discomfort, but instead faced it with you? That's love. And that's what love looks. Someone loves you, that's what you should expect, because real love is never conditional. It's not based on how easy things are or how comfortable things feel. It's about being willing to show up in the messiness of life, to hold space for one another when things aren't perfect. And when the other person is struggling, you don't turn away from them, you lean in. The absence of effort is a huge red flag. If someone loves you, they make you feel seen. They make you feel heard. They make you feel like you matter. And when they love you, it's not just words, it's action, it's presence, it's showing up. Even when they don't know exactly what to say or how to fix things, they show up because they care. They show up because they value you, and they don't leave you alone to figure it all out. They want to be there, even in your most vulnerable, imperfect moments. They want to face things with you, not around you. When love is real, it doesn't vanish at the first sign of trouble. Instead, it digs deeper. It opens up space for conversation. It creates room for honesty. Love that's real understands that growth requires discomfort. It knows that challenges are an inevitable part of any lasting connection. And rather than seeing them as obstacles, it sees them as opportunities to grow closer, to build trust, to understand each other better. And when there's distance or silence or uncertainty, the person who truly loves you doesn't run from it. They face it. They communicate. They don't disappear. We've all experienced the feeling of being emotionally neglected. It's painful. It's confusing. When someone you love, someone who once seemed to cherish your presence, starts to withdraw or goes silent, it's like the rug is pulled out from under you. You feel abandoned. You feel invisible. You feel like you're no longer a priority. And you begin to question everything. Did I do something wrong? What changed? Why am I being the truth is love doesn't vanish. Love doesn't ignore. And if someone is pulling away from you, if they're emotionally distancing themselves, that's not love. That's avoidance. That's fear. That's an inability or unwillingness to deal with the discomfort of conflict, vulnerability, or growth. It's not a sign of love. It's a sign of emotional immaturity, insecurity, or self-preservation. True love, the kind of love that builds something lasting, that creates connection, is a love that shows up no matter the circumstances. It's a love that doesn't run when things get hard. It's the kind of love that says, I'm here with you, no matter what. It doesn't make excuses for why it can't be present. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't take a back seat when life gets tough. It rises to the occasion. And this is important because so many of us settle for less. We get caught in relationships where we're constantly waiting for the other person to come back, to return, to make things right. We spend so much time chasing after someone who isn't giving us the effort we deserve, who isn't putting in the work, who isn't showing up for us when we need it. And we convince ourselves that maybe, just maybe, they'll come around. But if they're not showing up now, if they're not making the effort to communicate, to be present, to emotionally invest, what makes us think they will ever show up in the future? Real love doesn't vanish. And if someone truly loves you, they will show you that through their actions, their words, and their willingness to fight for you and the relationship. They won't give up when things get hard. They'll fight through the discomfort, the misunderstandings, the uncertainty, because they know that love is worth it. And you deserve nothing less. You deserve someone who will never disappear, someone who will always show up, someone who will be there with you through the highs and lows, through the joy and the pain, through the laughter and the tears. Because real love is not conditional on circumstances. Real love stands firm and it's here to stay. If they truly love you, they won't let you go no matter how hard things get. You are not a rehab center for broken people. This statement might sting a little, but it's a truth that needs to be heard. And when you really stop to think about it, it's liberating. It frees you from the toxic patterns that many of us fall into when we try to fix someone else, often at the expense of our own well-being. The truth is, you are not responsible for healing someone's wounds, especially if they aren't doing the work to heal themselves. It's not your job to save anyone from their own emotional baggage. There is a fine line between being compassionate and compassionate to the point of self-sacrifice. Too often, people enter relationships and find themselves playing the role of a caretaker, a fixer, a healer. But at what cost? When you start carrying someone else's emotional burdens, when you take on their trauma as your own, it can leave you emotionally exhausted, drained, and confused. And what happens over time is that you lose sight of your own needs, your own emotional health. Instead of focusing on your growth and happiness, you start putting the responsibility for someone else's happiness and healing on your shoulders. Here's the hard truth. You cannot heal someone who is not willing to heal themselves. You cannot save someone who refuses to confront their own issues, someone who is not actively working on their own emotional growth. You can't be the source of their emotional stability. You can't be their therapist, their counselor, or their emotional caretaker. Love is not about fixing someone. Love is about mutual growth, support, and respect. You see, a person who is emotionally unavailable, who refuses to acknowledge or address their own issues, will often try to draw you into their emotional chaos. They will rely on you to carry it of their unresolved pain, their fears, their insecurities, and their emotional wounds. They may even convince you that if you just love them harder, if you're more patient, if you stay a little longer, then maybe they'll change. And this can be incredibly seductive, especially for those of us who have a natural tendency to care deeply and want to help others. But let me say this clearly, loving someone does not mean enabling their dysfunction. You cannot love someone into healing. You cannot love someone into emotional maturity. You cannot love someone into self-worth or self-acceptance. It doesn't work that way. No matter how much love, patience, or support you give, if they are not doing the inner work to heal themselves, you will continue to be stuck in an unbalanced, one-sided relationship. And that is not fair to you. What's important to remember is that love should never be one-sided. It should not be about you constantly pouring into someone else without receiving anything in return. It should not be about you sacrificing your emotional health just to make the other person feel better. True love is about balance. It's about mutual respect and effort. It's about two people coming together to support each other's growth, not two people where one is consistently giving more than they're receiving. And if you find yourself in a relationship where you're always the giving, always the one trying to fix, always the one carrying the emotional weight, something is wrong. This doesn't mean that we can't be supportive in relationships. Of course, we're all human. We all have our struggles, our wounds, our pasts that shape us. And when we're in a healthy, balanced relationship, we naturally support each other through those hard times. We listen, we comfort, we offer our love and encouragement. But there's a difference between offering support and becoming someone's emotional crutch. There's a difference between helping someone work through their problems and being the person who's solely responsible for fixing them. The danger comes when you start losing yourself in the process of trying to fix someone else. You start putting all your energy into their healing and neglecting your own needs. You start questioning your worth, wondering if you're not doing enough to help them change. You begin to believe that their happiness is dependent on you. And in doing so, you lose your sense of self-worth. This is a trap. You cannot place your value or your happiness in someone else's hands, especially if they're unwilling to meet you halfway. When you enter a relationship with the belief that you can fix someone, what you're really doing is enabling their dysfunction. You're giving them permission to continue in their unhealthy patterns, and by doing so, you're allowing their emotional immaturity to dictate the terms of your relationship. You're setting yourself up for frustration, burnout, and heartbreak. So, how do you know if you're in this kind of dynamic? It's simple. Ask yourself if you're constantly putting in more effort than the other person. Are you always the one making sacrifices? Are you always the one carrying the emotional burden? Are you constantly forgiving behaviors that you shouldn't have to tolerate? Do you find yourself constantly fixing their emotional wounds, yet feeling drained and unappreciated in return? If the answer is yes, then it's time to step back and reevaluate the situation. The person you're with should be capable of emotional reciprocity. They should be able to meet you halfway. They should be willing to work on their issues, to take responsibility for their own healing, and to show up as an equal partner in the relationship. If they're not willing to do the work, then you can't be the one doing it for them. It's important to set boundaries, and this is something many of us struggle with, especially when we love deeply. We don't want to appear cold or uncaring, so we keep giving and giving, even when it's draining us. But boundaries are essential for maintaining your own emotional well-being. Boundaries are not about shutting someone out. They're about protecting your own energy and ensuring that the relationship is healthy and balanced. Boundaries help you preserve your sense of self and prevent you from becoming emotionally depleted. You need to understand that you are not responsible for someone else's healing. You can offer support, but you cannot heal them. You cannot be their savior. You can't be their emotional crutch. You can't fix their past or their emotional scars, no matter how much you want to. What you can do is love yourself enough to walk away when you realize that you're doing the work that they should be doing. You can love yourself enough to recognize when a relationship is no longer serving you and when it's time to prioritize your own emotional health. And this is where the shift happens. When you start prioritizing your own well-being and recognizing your worth, you stop being a fix-it person in relationships. You stop taking on the emotional baggage of others and start creating space for love that is healthily balanced and reciprocal. You start demanding the same level of effort, respect, and commitment that you give to others. And that's when you will truly begin to attract the kind of love that is worth your time, love that is mutual, respectful, and whole. You deserve to be loved for who you are, not for what you can fix in someone else. You are not a rehab center for broken people. You are a whole person worthy of love, respect, and emotional reciprocity. And once you realize that, everything changes. When someone refuses to meet you halfway, it feels like you're carrying the weight of the entire relationship on your shoulders. You put in all the effort, you make the sacrifices, and you show up time and time again, but you don't get the same in return. You feel like you're giving your all, while they're simply coasting, sitting back and taking what they can get. Over time, this pattern starts to erode your self-worth, your confidence, and your belief in the relationship itself. The imbalance becomes too great to ignore, and the relationship begins to feel like more of a burden than a partnership. At first, you may not notice it. Relationships, especially in the beginning, are full of excitement, chemistry, and passion. Everything seems effortless. The moments feel like they're flowing seamlessly, and it's easy to convince yourself that the connection is mutual and balanced. You may find yourself making excuses for why they aren't putting in as much effort. Maybe they're just busy. Maybe they're going through something difficult. Maybe they just need some space. But deep down, you know that something is off. You start to wonder, am I always the one making the effort? Why am I always the one compromising? The truth is, when someone doesn't meet you halfway, they're telling you something without saying a word. They're showing you that they're not fully invested in the relationship. They may be emotionally unavailable, distracted by other aspects of their life, or simply not as committed to the connection as you are. But whatever the reason, the effect is the same. They're not offering you the same level of emotional investment, care, and attention that you're giving them. And that imbalance is unsustainable. Relationships are not about one person doing all the work. They're about mutual growth, support, and respect. They require effort from both parties. They need a balance of give and take, of shared responsibility, of two people coming together to create something meaningful. When one person is doing all the heavy lifting, it creates an unhealthy dynamic. You start to feel resentful, hurt, and frustrated. You begin to question your value, your worthiness of love, and your place in the relationship. You wonder if they even care about you, or if you're just someone they're tolerating instead of someone they're truly committed to. But this is where the shift happens, Sadas. You are not responsible for carrying the entire weight of the relationship. You are not responsible for filling the emotional gaps, for managing all the difficult conversations, for making things work when the other person isn't putting in the effort. You deserve someone who is willing to meet you halfway, who is ready to share the responsibility, to make the effort, to show up. A relationship this one side is a recipe for burnout. It drains your energy, your happiness, and your sense of self-worth. When you constantly give and give without receiving anything in return, you start to lose yourself in the process. You lose sight of your own needs, your own desires, and your own dreams. You become so focused on making the other person happy that you forget to take care of yourself. And when you do that, you start to feel empty. You start to feel like you're not enough. You start to believe that the only way to make the relationship work is to sacrifice your own happiness and well-being. But that's not love. And love is not meant to be survived. Love is meant to be nourished, supported, and grown. It is meant to be shared, not carried alone. The hard truth is that if someone truly loved you, they wouldn't leave you carrying all the weight. They wouldn't expect you to do all the work, to be the only one making sacrifices, to be the only one showing up. A partner who loves you will meet you halfway. They will put in the effort. They will be there when you need them. They will make the effort to communicate, to understand, to compromise, and to work through the challenges together. If you find yourself in a relationship where you're always the one taking on the emotional labor, where you're constantly trying to fix things to please the other person, to make them happy, then it's time to take a step back and evaluate the situation. Are you really in a partnership, or are you simply acting as a caretaker? Are you truly being loved, or are you being taken for granted? When someone refuses to meet you halfway, it's a sign that they are not emotionally available or invested in the relationship. It's a sign that they may be using you to fulfill their own emotional needs without giving anything in return. It's a sign that they are not willing to do the work required to build a healthy, balanced relationship. And no matter how much you care about them, no matter how much you love them, you cannot carry the entire weight of the relationship on your own. You deserve someone who will show up for in the same way that you show up for them. You deserve someone who will be there for you when things get tough, who will listen when you need to be heard, who will make compromises, who will invest in the growth of the relationship, and who will treat you with the respect and love that you give them. But here's the kicker: it starts with you. It starts with you recognizing that you don't have to settle for a relationship where you're doing all the work. It starts with you acknowledging your own worth and demanding the same level of commitment and effort from your partner. It starts with you refusing to accept one-sided love and instead embracing the idea that you deserve a partnership where both people show up, both people in the work, and both people are equally invested in each other. If someone refuses to meet you halfway, it's a reflection of their inability or unwillingness to prioritize you in the relationship. And that's not a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of their emotional capacity. Their inability to meet you halfway isn't a measure of your worthiness of love. It's a measure of their emotional maturity and willingness to engage in the relationship. And here's the liberating part: once you stop doing all the work, once you stop carrying the weight of the relationship on your shoulders, you make room for someone who is ready and willing to meet you halfway. You make space for a partnership that is balanced, supportive, and healthy. You make room for someone who will show up for you in the same way that you show up for them. Someone who will be a true partner in every sense of the word. You deserve to feel supported, loved, and appreciated. You deserve to be with someone who sees your worth and values your presence in their life. You deserve someone who will meet you halfway. And when you stop accepting anything less, you open yourself up to a relationship that is truly reciprocal. One where both partners are invested, where both people are equally committed, and the weight of the relationship is shared equally. So, stop carrying the weight. Stop doing all the work. Start demanding the love, effort, and commitment that you deserve. You don't have to do it alone. You deserve to have someone who meets you halfway. And when you find that person, the relationship will be worth every bit of effort you put into it. When you are constantly put in a position where you are expected to prove your worth, to validate your value, it starts to erode the foundation of who you are. It undermines your self-esteem, your self-respect, and your ability to believe in the genuine love or affection of others. Being in a situation where you feel like you're constantly trying to prove yourself can be emotionally exhausting and demoralizing. It's as though no matter what you do, it's never enough. You start to question your own worth, and with time, you may begin to feel invisible, unimportant, or dispensable. It's critical to understand that your value is intrinsic. It's not something that should be constantly up for debate, nor is it something that should be contingent upon someone else's validation. Yet, how often do we find ourselves in situations where we feel the need to prove ourselves? We bend over backward, we sacrifice our time and energy, and we give more of ourselves than we ever should, all in an attempt to gain approval, to earn love, or to feel like we matter. The problem with this mindset is that it leads to a cycle of self-neglect. We pour so much of ourselves into someone else's view of us that we lose sight of how important it is to love and validate ourselves. We start giving up parts of our identity, our core values, and our desires to fit in the mold of someone else's expectations. And ultimately, we lose ourselves in the process. This isn't love. This is conditional acceptance, and that's not what you deserve. True love, real affection, real friendship, they are based on mutual respect and genuine connection. They are about seeing someone for who they truly are and valuing them, not just for what they can do for you or for how much they can prove their worth to you. Yet, time and again, people find themselves trapped in relationships where they are expected to prove their value, where their worth is measured by their actions, their sacrifices, or their ability to meet someone else's needs. But this is a dangerous game to play because it never ends. The cycle of proving yourself never satisfies the hunger for real, authentic connection. You may win temporary approval or affection, but it won't last. The reason is simple: when your value is dependent on external validation, you're not operating from a place of authenticity. You're operating from a place of insecurity, fear, and desperation for approval. And that kind of energy is felt. When you're constantly trying to prove yourself, it creates an imbalance in your relationships. The other person may begin to take for granted, or worse, they may stop seeing you for who you really are. Instead, they see you as a means to an end, someone who is always trying to please them, to prove that they are worthy of love, worthy of attention, and worthy of affection. It's important to understand that love is not about proving yourself. It's about being accepted and loved for who you are, not for what you do. Love is about showing up authentically and being vulnerable enough to be seen in your full, imperfect humanity. True love does not require you to jump through hoops. It does not require you to prove that you are worthy, because you already are. You are worthy of love and affection simply because you exist. There is no need to perform, to overextend yourself, or to prove that you belong. Your existence alone is enough to be loved. Unfortunately, many of us spend years, sometimes decades, trying to prove that we are worthy of love. We sacrifice our needs and desires to fit someone else's mold. We twist ourselves into knots, constantly trying to make others happy or meet their expectations. But in doing so, we lose sight of ourselves. We stop listening to our own needs, and we start living for the approval of others. And this is where the danger lies. When you start basing your worth on external validation, you give away your power. You give others the control over how you feel about yourself. You stop determining your own value, and you start letting others decide your worth based on how much you can give, how much you can do, or how much you can prove. The constant need to prove yourself can leave you emotionally drained. It can lead to resentment, burnout, and a sense of emptiness. And the worst part is that it's never enough. No matter how much you do, no matter how much you prove, there will always be more to prove. There will always be another expectation, another demand, and another sacrifice required. It becomes a never-ending cycle of trying to gain approval, and it leaves you feeling exhausted, unappreciated, and ultimately unseen. This is why it is so important to stop proving yourself to people who don't value. You deserve to be loved and appreciated for who you are, not for what you can do for others. You deserve to be seen, heard, and understood without having to jump through hoops or sacrifice your own needs. You deserve to be in relationships where your worth is recognized simply because you exist. Your love, your presence, and your energy are enough as they are. If someone cannot see that, if someone cannot appreciate you for who you truly are, then they do not deserve to have you in their life. Recognizing that you are worthy of unconditional love, that you do not need to prove yourself to anyone, is liberating. It allows you to step into your power and take back control of your life. You are not a tool to be used by others to feel validated. You are not here to meet everyone else's needs while neglecting your own. You are here to be seen, to be valued, and to live authentically. When you stop proving yourself, you begin to attract relationships that are built on mutual respect, understanding, and unconditional love. You stop attracting people who see you as a project or as someone to be fixed, or as someone to be constantly tested. Instead, you start attracting people who appreciate you for who you are, your flaws, your strengths, your quirks, and everything in between. And this kind of connection is what will bring you real happiness, peace, and fulfillment. It's time to stop proving your worth to anyone. You don't need to earn someone's love. You are already worthy. You don't need to prove your value. Your value is inherent, and no one can take that away from you. True love, true affection, and true connections are not about proving yourself. They are about being yourself. And that is more than enough.